because your friends get it. We have a bad habit. I was there. I was that activist that was out there going to Albany, and I'm fighting for this. But we spent too much time going to our friends as opposed to going to, I'm not going to call them our enemies, but the ones who are behaving complicated. And you got to go after the ones who are behaving complicated to get them to change your mind, because lobbying Senator Bailey or Assemblymember Lintel is not going to move the ball down the road. But you got to go, I'm not going to call the Senate. I don't know where the senator is on this one. But if there are other senators in the IDC and other senators who can't figure it out, then that's where we need to spend our energy moving that ball down in their court, in their backyard.
I don't mind referring to members of the Independent Democratic Conference, or IDC, as our enemies. My name is Sami Disu, and I am a New York City-based activist and educator. For those that don't know, New York State is one of a few where prosecutors are not required to provide criminal defendants with key evidence until the start of trial. So if you can't afford to pay bail, as Khalif Browder and many others have found themselves in, you may be languishing in jail for weeks or even months, as Assemblyman Joe Lenthal explains.
Now, anybody who watches Law and Order, anybody who watches any crime show that depicts New York would think that criminal discovery was not only the law of the land, but certainly the law in New York State, because they mention it as though it's a fairness issue for everybody to know what the other side has before you begin a proceeding. But now you know from hearing the others that it's not so in New York. And the district attorney of every county controls criminal discovery. Now, some are better than others because they allow discovery, and some don't allow discovery until the eve of trial. And we seek to change that statute. And I've introduced for longer than 10 years, or 12 years rather, criminal discovery statutes, some of which have passed the New York State Assembly several times and never passed the New York State Senate. Hopeful that maybe with the window opening, as I've heard some of the previous panelists discuss, that we will have a change in thinking. But I have to be honest with you as much as I can, that given the present political climate in the New York State Senate, it really seems unlikely. So I don't want to kid anybody and say that go out there, lobby for it, and it's going to happen. Because I've been in Albany a long time, and I've seen that the district attorneys control what criminal justice legislation gets passed in the New York State Senate. That's just the way it is, and we have to live within that. Doesn't mean to say that we can't change it. It may require changing the political makeup of the New York State Senate to do it.
Yep.
I will tell you more about the IDC effect in future episodes, but for now, it is sufficient to know that all present 8 members of the Independent Democratic Conference were elected as Democrats, but side with Republicans in the New York Senate, and thereby ensuring Republican control. So in effect, they can choose to sponsor criminal discovery reform, which was the focus of this panel. However, the catch is that their Republican masters will not allow such reforms to see the light of day.
It's so disheartening having practiced personal injury and miscellaneous legal matters in civil court in many counties that I'm entitled to discovery way faster in a civil matter than you would be in a criminal discovery case, right? Furthermore, if you do not comply with the PC or the CC or the preliminary conference or the compliance conference order, a judge can strike your pleadings for failure to comply with the discovery order. Yet, when we're talking about life and liberty being on the line, New York is 10 steps behind. As my colleague said, there is a shameful problem with that in this state. And it's going to take all of you to have that same energy, that groundswell of energy that you had around Raise the Age, around this matter. And, you know, based on the nature of what's happening in the state senate, do I see either of my bills going through? Probably not. This was the very first bill I introduced as a member of the state senate, though, was on discovery, because that's how important it is to me. But you keep the fight going because you have to fight.
Hardly a year into his tenure as my state senator, Jamal Bailey already understands the problem of IDC collusion with Republicans upon his bill, which didn't proceed anywhere in the Republican-controlled Senate. So, like an increasing number of politicians across New York, he has been outspoken against the IDC as well. So why do the IDC senators even caucus with Republicans? Money. The individual IDC members receive increased salaries and leadership posts in the Senate. But as Councilman Andy King explains, the broken criminal justice system is operating exactly as it was intended to do. If you have time, read Michelle Alexander's The New Jim Crow.
Information early enough for I can prepare proper defense. But if the system is not about finding justice, if the system is not about finding truth, then they will never allow a system to work in that manner to find justice and truth. So I say this to us all as we sit here today, and we will continue as legislators in the city council. We're counting on the state. That's what my resolution is calling on, and for them to pass and the governor to sign, is being able to say, let's call out the system for what it is. You know, there's a whole lot of fact. The last panel talked about the different moving parts that is part of early discovery. It's not just that simple. You know, in some cases, it just is just that simple. You know, we want to make it complicated. Why? Because how much money is in the incarcerated system? You know, if you need to keep a system in place, and I just go back to the 13th Amendment where it says, hey, listen, slavery is illegal in the United States unless you are in prison. You know, so today slavery goes by the name of incarceration. So since it's a business, you got to have people to go into your business. So how do you do that? You stack the deck against your own society, especially a society you've been trying to oppress since day one. So you will never have open discovery until the people in systems like us will say, hey, listen, we need to change the narrative. More importantly, we need to remove the people who are in the way of getting righteous and passing the laws. So
it wasn't surprising that an audience member asked the moderator to find out why the Senate would even be against passing something like criminal discovery reform. After all, the New York State Senate presently has 32 Democrats versus 31 Republicans.
Well, the state senate, from where I sit, is not against it. It's just a matter of making sure that we have a workable majority that would allow us to pass legislation like this. The current configuration of power does not permit us to pass legislation such as this. It has been brought to session, as Assemblyman Lenthal mentioned earlier. He has introduced his bill for quite some time, and it consistently passes the Assembly. So it's not a matter of not wanting to bring it to session, but certain things, for whatever reason, don't get out of committee in the Senate. And unless there is, absent seeing this in the budget or a change in Albany, it's going to be very difficult. But I wouldn't liken it to saying the Senate is against it. I would say the people who control the Senate, by and large, are against it. By and large.
State Senator Tony Avella, who was supposed to show at this important panel on discovery reform, did not show up. Nor do I expect him to show up at an upcoming town hall in his district. IDC members have been hard to come by with the growing scrutiny of their effects on stalled legislations like Liberty Act, Single Payer or Medicare for All, or discovery reform, as in this case. But Senator Avella's legislative counsel, Mr. Eilman, was at hand to do the best that he could do.
In terms of Senator Avella, as the chairman of Children and Families, he was at the forefront of Raise the Age, and he's going to be at the forefront of this. This going into session is going to be one of his biggest priorities. That's why he picked up the bill. Anybody that knows Tony knows that he doesn't just pick up things to let it sit there. He's going to push as hard as he can. He wouldn't have picked this bill up if he would win it otherwise. We've met with we've met with every group that we can. We had the groups that are here tonight into Senator Avella's office to talk about this. He's on top of this. One of the first things we did, we sat down with the district attorneys in Queens to say, hey, how can we make this happen? How can we work together to get this done? Because he knows that they're one of the playmakers, you know, one of the play callers in the New York State Senate. We want to get this done. So for Senator Avella, this is the priority right now.
And I really respect and think that Senator Avella means well. Problem is not his. The problem really is with the relationship between the IDC and the Republican Party that worries me in getting this done, because it gives them, the IDC, the opportunity to just say that we tried, but we didn't have 32 votes, and that's not going to last very long. It's not lasting now. I've not been critical of the IDC because I respect everybody's right to have an opinion, but I think that this is no longer going to be able to sell in the IDC, and that they're going to find they have a difficult time unless they're able to help us in the Senate and muster the 32 votes in order to do it. And I know it's a big burden.
If you listen closely, you can tell that Assemblyman Lenthal, like most Democrats in New York State, would prefer for IDC members to rejoin Democrats so that we can have a Democratic majority in the Senate and finally see through reforms like discovery reform. Personally, I'm no longer holding my breath, especially after the recent IDC enabling reunification deal being pushed by Governor Cuomo and other Democratic leaders. In fact, I have been calling IDC senators Trump Democrats all year because these Democrats have been putting their own interests above those of the entire state. This is not unlike what the federal government under Trump is attempting in pushing disastrous and divisive policies like the Trump tax scam, repeal of Obamacare, Muslim travel bans, etc.
And trust me, I said it earlier, this is not an accident. This is a design for a set of people going back to the 13th Amendment to make sure that there's a system that keeps a certain amount of people incarcerated. If you want to release and let the public be free, then you don't have books on the laws on the books that hinders your own society. What the goal is not to have a free society. The goal is to have a controlled society. And that's what lack of open discovery does. So I'm asking you to continue to participate, continue to educate yourself, continue to knock on the doors of those elected that are supposed to do right by us. And if they don't do right by us, you know, every September there is something called primary day. And if they can't get it right, then we move them out. So I'm saying to you, that's the only way we get this done.